So I'm going to start with the sermon now. What do you do when you doubt? What do you do when you doubt? Well, doubt what? Doubt God. Doubt your calling. Doubt your conversion. And I want to ask the question to start says, how many of us have ever struggled with doubt? Now, if everyone in here doesn't raise your hand on that, then you're either deceived or lying. Because everyone has doubts occasionally, and we have an accuser who is prince of the power of the air that makes sure that he can put that doubt right in the center of the gray matter. He can make sure that we're aware of it, and he tells on us to the Father and to our Lord Jesus Christ. Look what they did. They're not really converted. And he tells us that. It's not necessarily doubt about specific doctrines of the church. We're pretty set at this point in time. After all, Mr. Armstrong started almost 100 years ago now, preaching and studying and learning and passing that information on to us. And there's not generally doubts about particular prophecies because we don't have it all put together by any stretch of the imagination. But we have a thread that runs through the truth that we have been given understanding to. And we have questions. But sometimes Satan can be so invasive that he'll put doubts about God himself in our mind. It's not complete unbelief, but questions, uncertainties, fears. And we have moments when we wonder, is God really there? I mean, right now. Is he here right now? I know God's out there. I believe in God. Does he hear me? He doesn't seem to be hearing me right now. And Satan will tell you, God doesn't really care about you. And so you ask, does he care? Doesn't he see what's going on in my life right now? And he must be able to see that this is not a good thing. And so is he really interested? Why is this happening to me anyway? My life is a mess. And why is the answer? Why am I not getting the answers I want? He must not have called me after all. Maybe I'm not really called. Most Christians have experienced those kinds of questions in their minds. Yet we seldom share those situations because we feel guilty if we did. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This is an abnormal Christian response. And we sometimes have in mind that a mature Christian, well, you've been here for ages, you've prayed regularly, you've fasted, and all of this, that a mature Christian should not have these kinds of doubts. But the reality is that we do. And the Bible itself paints a different picture. In fact, doubts, even in the church, are pretty common. Many of God's greatest servants experienced moments of uncertainty, and we'll include Abraham, Moses, Elijah, David, Job, Thomas, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and even John the Baptist. The one that Jesus Christ said, there is no greater. But he sent to Jesus Christ his disciples there and says, are you the one? Are you the one? Was there a brief thought of doubt there? Did he not need reassurance? And the issue is not whether doubt appears, it will. The issue is really, what do we do when it appears? What steps can be taken, and what steps must you take? Or do we surrender to that doubt? Or do we overcome that doubt? And so today, I want to demonstrate that sincere belief in God is essential for salvation. It's sincere, and I'm going to focus on the word belief in God is essential for salvation, that in the face of that necessity, doubt is a normal part of spiritual growth. Doubt can be used for spiritual gain. And that overcoming doubt through experience, testing, remembrance, and relationship with God produces mature faith that can endure until the return of Jesus Christ. I want to start in Hebrews, the 11th chapter. Hebrews 11. This is one of the big chapters in the Bible. Hebrews 11, the faithful chapter. And I'm going to look at verse 6. And it says, "But without faith, it is impossible to please him," to please God. "For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him." As Mr. DeCampos always used to say, full stop. And so we're going to focus right there. And I want to tell you, this verse contains several essential requirements of Christian growth. And my first point there is that faith is mandatory. It's not an extracurricular activity, something that you may do or may have or may not. Faith is mandatory. It says we must have faith. And it's not merely helpful. Yeah, faith would be pretty helpful, right? Faith is certainly desirable. I'd sure like to have it. It would be advantageous because I would have a closer connection with God. Doesn't say any of those things. It says that it is mandatory. Must believe. And it also goes on to say that without that faith that you must have, it is impossible to please God at all. If you don't have that belief, God is not pleased, and God is not pleased in you. It's not just difficult for him to be pleased in you. It's impossible. And so we must believe that God is. Now you might say, well, I've had that all my life. What page am I on? Okay. I'm going to use that as a weight. I'm going to say, you've had that all of your life? No, you haven't. You haven't had that faith all of your life. Notice what Paul does not say. He does not merely say we must believe there is a God. Say we have to believe that there is the God. the God. There are lots of gods. There are lots of gods. And in James, the 2nd chapter, a well-known verse once again, going the wrong direction here. James 2, and verse 19. That if we're just talking about belief, it said, you believe, brethren, you believe that there is one God, that there is the God. You do well. Even the demons believe that. Even the demons believe and tremble. So just belief that there is God out there doesn't do you any good at all. The faith of Hebrews 11:6 is something deeper, something more important. It is believing that God is real enough that we should obey him. He's real enough that we should trust him. You know, you can say Zeus is God. Well, that's just a myth, right? And we could get to the point where we said that the true God is just a myth, and a lot of people have done that. They could say that God is real enough that we should trust him, that we should sacrifice for him, that we should follow wherever and however he leads us. Now, that's more than just knowledge. God, here's another point, also included in Hebrews, the 11th chapter. God rewards those who diligently seek him. You got to believe he is. And if you do, God rewards if you diligently seek him. Because that if plays into the type of relationship that you have with God. Now, diligently, because we're still talking about Hebrews 11:6. Diligently. Let's look at the word diligently. It comes from the Greek word Strong's number 1567, which is exetio. Exetio, and it means earnest pursuit, persistent, persistent. You know, I'm just after you. We're just after God all the time. Persistent searching and determined efforts. In the computer world, it's calling, we're going down the rabbit hole for God, for knowledge about God. We're trying to search, and oops, there's a side tunnel there. So we dip down into the side tunnel, and well, there's another channel that leads. We go up that way, and after a while, we see an entire maze of different things that we can go, but we search it all out. We go that extra mile. And it's not just a casual interest. It's not just occasional curiosity. It's not just inherited religion. Let's talk about inherited religion in just a bit. It's not merely attending church because our dad and our mom took us to Sunday school and we learned about baby Jesus and men in red suits and rabbits that lay colored eggs. It's conviction, it's confidence, it's trust, and it's relationship. And a promise comes after that diligent seeking. And that is, God is a rewarder. A rewarder. Example here. Abraham. And so, God made many promises to Abraham. Many promises. Your kids are going to be first in the world from now on. Your descendants are going to inherit the prime portion of the earth. I'm going to give that to you and your offspring. And yet Abraham never had it. He never had an inch of it. What did Abraham have? Let's go to, it's not really a reward of land or things or position or place. Let's go to Genesis, the 15th chapter. Genesis, the 15th chapter. In Genesis, the 15th chapter, and verse 1, and it says, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram. This is before his name was changed to Abraham. And it came to him in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceeding great reward. I am your reward. And God gave him a promise that there would be a relationship between him and Abram, later Abraham, and that relationship would extend through time. And it's the same with us. We have as well the opportunity for a relationship with our God as well. And he further said, in Genesis 15 and verse 6, what Abram's response was to that. And he, Abram, what? Believed. He believed in the Lord, and the Lord in turn accounted it to him for righteousness. This is the substance of relationship. A mutual trust back and forth, a mutual caring, a mutual moving forward into the future. You know, I grew up attending church from the very earliest of ages. If someone had asked me before I came into God's True Church, I would have, do you believe in God? I said, well, absolutely. I believe in God. At 6 years old, I would have said, yeah, I believe in God. At 10 years old, I was, yeah, I believe in God. I believe in babies in a manger. And I believe in fat men in red suits that ride sleighs pulled by reindeers. And I believe that the Easter Bunny comes along and lays colored eggs. Now, eventually, those beliefs began to wear. I mean, common sense comes along at some point in time. At that time, I trusted, when I was in high school, say, I trusted science. I believed evolution was true, that it explained our existence. I believed many scientists had demonstrated that God was unnecessary. I believed the universe was eternal. I believed that life had emerged through natural processes. And I believed that there was this conflict between belief in God and science. Boy, was God about to knock me down. I believe that because, that's what I believe because I never looked into it. And many of the scientists throughout recent history, 1800s, 1900s, believed what they believed for the same reason. They were told a lot of false things and they never bothered to check it out. And because I trusted my teachers, I accepted those ideas without any serious investigation on my part. At the same time, I started reading the Bible. And I started seeing inconsistencies, things that just didn't quite make sense. But you know, that was also starting to happen within the scientific community itself. Many people assume science destroyed belief in God. But actual science, actual scientific discoveries that were going on, people who were looking up at the cosmos, and people, we're in the, what I call the nexus of two universes. You've got the universe that goes outward into the cosmos, and you've got the universe that goes smaller and smaller down into the intricacies of the cell. You know, the functioning of DNA, the functioning of mitochondria, the functioning of those cellular particles and how they're put together. But actual scientific discoveries created serious challenges for the atheist. One of the first things that really caught my mind was when I discovered that the universe had a beginning. You know, the universe is out there. I mean, it goes on, and I thought it went on forever and ever and ever, and that it was infinite, and that time, I used to think about God. How could God be infinite back in time and forward in time? I've since discovered that time has no relationship to God at all, except as he created it to deal with mankind. Time's important to us. I'm 77 years old 2 weeks from today. Time's important. There was a time when I wasn't. And there will be a time when there's an interruption. It's called death. And then a resurrection beyond that. So time is important to us. Time is less important to God because he is eternal. That has nothing to do with time. That has to do with a state of being. God is in that state of being called eternity. And for many centuries, scientists preferred that eternal universe, that infinite universe that I thought was there. And eternal universe, it removes concepts of God. I mean, it's going on forever and ever. How does that prove that there is even a God? But then they started studying, and they've been studying for so long, and then the evidence began to accumulate, and it was discovered that the universe has not been forever. It had a starting point. And also time had a starting point at the same time that the universe started to expand. Scientific discoveries, hard science, looked at, tested, proven, and then they looked at the side issues, tested it, and proved it, that there was a time when the universe did not exist, that nothing existed. There was a beginning of matter, there was a beginning of energy, and there was a beginning of time itself. What do you look at when you look at before time? And so the big question became, you know, and it was a question that came to my mind when I discovered that. Who started it? If it wasn't, and then came to be, how did it get started? Who put the matter there? Who put the energy there? And who put the time there? Now, there were scientists who actually reconsidered their atheism. because they were having the same questions when they started seeing the evidence. A man by the name of Antony Flew. And for decades, Flew was one of the world's best known atheists. Later in life, he concluded that the absolute complexity of life and the information contained in DNA, something that related to information. You can have stuff, but information and stuff that relates to information points toward an intelligence rather than just simply an accident. And when asked why he changed from being an atheist to, we won't say that he knows the one true God. We don't know that he was called, but we don't know that he wasn't. I just can't address that. But they wanted to know why he changed. And he said, I just followed the evidence. I was a true scientist looking for true answers. And so I just followed the evidence, and the evidence pointed to there must be an intelligence that started all of this. A man by the name of Alan Sandage, one of the world's leading astronomers. And after years studying the universe, built an entire career on studying the universe and assuming that there is no God, concluded that the order and the structure of creation pointed beyond purely material explanations. Something or someone started it all. Francis Collins, leader of the Human Genome Project. Ever hear of the Human Genome Project? Where it mapped the entirety of the human genome, all of the DNA. Rather than seeing it all spelled out and continuing in an unbelief, he concluded that DNA, that the informational complexity of that DNA, that it strengthened his belief into saying that it had to come from an intelligence, but they don't know what to call it. Mind, being. They almost always avoid God. Even to this day, they understand that there's something. But if you talk about God, you have to talk about obedience. And we live in a world that they don't want to do that. Lee Strobel, Chicago Tribune journalist, went on a 2-year study to absolutely disprove God and became a God-professing Christian in the process. They were just following Romans 1st chapter, verse 20 observation, where Paul was talking about such things. Romans 1, verse 20. Having doubts? It says in verse 24 that since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that he made. Look out into the cosmos. Look down into the cell. Look at the structure of the DNA. Look at how life works. Look at the intricacy of it. Look at the probabilities, mathematical probabilities, that it could not be. And it was said that there is a higher probability of there not being a God than the probabilities of there actually being a God. So even those mathematicians look at the most probable outcome, and they might fall a little short of saying God, but they say a higher intelligence for sure. And so we see many thinkers had begun by assuming God was not real, but through investigation concluded exactly the opposite. And for some, science, when honestly applied, became a bridge toward belief rather than away from it. So doubt, and there can still be doubt, that comes from a lot of places, and belief can coexist. You know, a true atheist doesn't have any doubt about God. That's the entire focus of his belief system, of an atheist belief system. He's already concluded that there is none, but it's constantly on his mind. It's constantly on his mind. There is no God. God is at the end of every sentence. You know, there is no God. Christians experience doubt precisely because belief already exists. I believe, but I have questions. And doubt is simply our faith under attack. It's belief struggling against uncertainty. Let's look at Mark chapter 9. Interesting little story here. This is the man that Jesus Christ cast a demon out of his son. And Jesus Christ, look at verse 23. And Jesus said to him, if you can believe, remember our definition of belief before? If you can believe, and this is belief that changes your life, the belief that creates a relationship. If you can believe, all things are possible to him who does that believing. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, I do believe. Help my unbelief. He's saying, yeah, I believe, but boy, there are these thoughts of doubt that come into my mind. Help me with that. Help my unbelief. This shows that faith and doubt can exist simultaneously in frail, weak moments. And Christ didn't condemn him for that. He didn't condemn him for that at all. He just went ahead, he said, if you believe, these things can happen. This healing can go on. Jesus Christ didn't condemn him. What did he do? He rebuked the unclean spirit, verse 25, saying to it, deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more. No condemnation for doubt. But it was a good, honest response that the man made to Jesus Christ. Okay, so we have the need to believe, that we must believe, and we've had lots of people who, all of us, do have those thoughts, must have those thoughts, will have those thoughts, and it's not necessarily going to condemn us. So what do we do? I mean, we have to fight against it, though. What do we do when our faith weakens? So I'm going to give you 6 points. Point number one, expect your faith to be tested. Why doesn't God remove all uncertainty? Just give us what we want whenever we ask for it, and we will have no doubt. You'll be constantly available as our Alexa, or give me the answer. And that's the question. Why doesn't God remove all uncertainty? And the answer is because tested faith becomes stronger faith. It becomes sure faith. God is building a perfect product in us, a perfect being in each and every one of us. 1 Peter, the first chapter. 1 Peter 1, verse 6. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you've been grieved by various trials. What? God didn't give you everything you wanted whenever you asked for it. Why not? That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. There's a purpose that you don't get everything you want whenever you want it. Because your faith becomes stronger in the process. Gold is refined through heat. And likewise, faith is refined through trials. Gold, they heat it up, the yucky stuff floats to the top, and they skim it off. All well and good. You've got 60% purity now, right? And so you heat it up again. And more yucky stuff floats to the top. And so you skim that off again. And you've got pure silver or gold after that. Heat it up again. Yucky stuff comes to the top. It's a lot thinner now. There's not as much of it there now. But you skim it off. And you finally get down to where you've had pure gold. And God does this for us so that he can have pure faith in us. That's his goal. James, the first chapter, not too far away. James 1. Too many pages. James 1, verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. I hate that scripture. Man, I not only have to endure the trials, I've got to count it all joy. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. What is patience, anyhow? What is patience? Patience is, if you're talking about let patience have its perfect work, then you're having, if you use the smelting process again, purer faith. Purer faith. Purer patience. It's hard to say. Purer patience. Okay. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces even more patience. God's not merely looking for believers. He's developing sons and daughters of the ultimate purity with ultimate faith and ultimate patience. Just like he has, because we are created in the image of God. Now, aren't you happy that God has the patience that he does? Point 2. Understand that trials can reawaken doubt. We've had a whole rash of sickness lately. Finances are in the pot. We've had several members of our household, our extended family, die. You know, my business partner betrayed me and stole all of the goods in the company. And we've had one suffering after another, and questions pop up, questions we thought that we'd worked out and put to rest. The issue's not whether questions arrive or not. You know, questions will pop up, and experiences of this life won't all be pleasant. And the problem with bad experiences in your life is they hurt. And we don't like to hurt. And we try to avoid it. And so what do? We turn back to God to try to gain understanding and to relieve the doubt and to come to the understanding that yes, God is there. Yes, he does hear. Yes, he does care. And yes, he will deliver you from all of your trials and problems. But it may take a while. Point 3, remember that even the greatest servants of God struggled. Elijah, read through 1 Kings 18 and 19. And he triumphed over 450 prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, and he became discouraged and wanted to die. I just can't live with my life. Just please kill me, God. And then we have, for instance, David. Turn to Psalms 10. And you could turn to probably 50 Psalms of David and get this same kind of an understanding. Psalms 10. Got big, fat, clumsy fingers here. Look at how this psalm starts. Why do you stand afar off, Lord? You're way out there. I don't see you anywhere. Why do you hide in times of trouble? You're just not there when I need you. The wicked in his pride persecutes the poor. You see what's going on? Why aren't you doing something? Let them be caught in the plots which they have devised. For the wicked boasts of his heart's desire. He blesses the greedy and renounces the Lord. The wicked in his proud countenance, he doesn't seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. Why are you letting this go on? And so we see that the psalmist is questioning and bewildered. He's trying to work the things out. He's trying to understand. He's having doubts. Why are things going on the way they are? And yet, in actual fact, he never lost his relationship to God. To see how that psalm ends. Verse 16, the Lord is king forever and ever. The nations have perished out of his land. Lord, you have heard the desire of the humble. You will prepare their hearts. You're going to put aside their doubts. You will cause your ear to hear. to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may oppress no more. That's the God that we are developing relationship with. That's the God who does here. That's the God who will set aside your doubts if you stick with him. Job. Job was a man of problems. And he was whining and crying to God and boasting about his own righteousness. And finally, the Lord told him, hey, where were you when I did all of these things creating the earth? Tell me all about it, Job. Because if you're so smart and wise, you can give me instruction, right, Job? And finally, Job got the message, and he said, what, Job 42. It's not too far. Job 42 and verse 5. Job finally came to the point and said, I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. I see what you're really all about now. I see you, Lord. I see you for what you really are. Therefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. All of our life is an effort to put aside doubt and to build relationship with God. Point 4. Work toward the now I know moment. Abraham, after he demonstrated his willingness to go ahead and sacrifice his only son, who was, by the way, promised specifically by God to be the father going forward after Abraham, all the way to the establishment of the kingdom of God when Jesus Christ will return. If Isaac is gone, God is a liar. God's not good for his promise. And this is inconsistent. This is a moment of doubt in Abraham's mind. Here I've got this set of statements from God, and I've got, he wants me to sacrifice Isaac, and yet if I sacrifice Isaac, this set of circumstances, it can never happen. And so Abraham says, there's something I don't understand. So I'm going to go ahead and do this because of what? Because of what? Because of relationship. Because of trust. Because it expelled his doubts. He had already left Ur the Chaldees. God had told him to leave. He did, and he was rewarded. God had built up over time a trust. Now, he didn't stop having problems. He lied twice to kings. He tried to work things out on his own by lying to the kings, and then the affair with Hagar. And yet God was patient. It's the pure patience again. God was patient and worked with him and built this relationship with him. And in Genesis, the 22nd chapter, verse 12, is when God said of him, now I know that you fear God. And there is that moment coming in our lives as well. Why do we have our trials? Why do we have our difficulties? Why are we actively searching and looking and studying to develop a relationship with Almighty God, our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ? That's because it is the relationship that is important. And we will have to endure. We will have to endure the purification. We will have to endure the trials and the sufferings and the prayer and the anguish and the trust. that gets built between us and God. And the day will come in each of our lives when God will say of each of you, each of us, now I know. Now I know that I have a true relationship with that individual. Point 5, look back and remember. When doubt arises, go back and rehearse the reason you came to believe in the first place. That's going to be different with everybody. It's going to be different for the third and fourth and fifth generation Christian as it is for those of us who are first generation Christians. There are going to be different reasons. One of the greatest weapons against doubt is memory. Remembering what God has already shown, already done, already answered, and already proven in our lives. Just going to look at Psalm 77:11. I'm not going to turn there, but it says, I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. This particular psalmist doesn't deny having stress or distresses in his life, but he deliberately, he deliberately turns his mind back to the works that God has done in him. And God has proven and admonished us, Deuteronomy 8:2, and you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness. Never been gone, never been hiding, never, had my head down in the sand, not knowing where you are, not caring about you. Lamentations 3, verse 21 through 23, just an excerpt here. This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. So I recall it, and that gives me hope. That dispenses with doubts. Through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed, because his compassion fails not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And so, Jeremiah, the penner, the writer, the marker with ink of the lamentation, intentionally recalled God's faithfulness. He used that. He remembered. He looked back. And this last point, ask practical questions when doubts return. Why was it that I first became convinced God existed? And my answer is because the universe is not eternal. Now that's simple. That's scientific, And I was at the science moment. I was not at the relationship with God moment right there. I was at the beginning stage. I was at the science moment, the thing I could see. And I could see that if there was a time when the universe was not, and it is now, and it's growing, and it's getting bigger, and it's getting faster, there had to be somebody to get it going, to keep it going, and to make it go faster. No other explanation. And that mattered to me at that moment. And that became a sincere example of proving to myself that God is real. How's God guided me over time? My life's better now. Ellen and I have often said that God's way of life would be worth it even if there wasn't a God. Because it leads you in the right direction. But that way of life wouldn't be there without God. And I look back on what trials has he brought me through already. What truths has he revealed to me? What evidence of his faithfulness have I already seen? Faith is often restored by remembering what God has already done in your life. But then we look at the ultimate enemy that we have, cowardice. Failing to do what we need to do because of the doubts that we have. Revelation 21, verse 8. But the cowardly, unbelieving, we're talking about belief. Belief in God is a must. And the cowardly person who's not believing in God, not building that relationship, and then a whole bunch of other things here listed, shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Fail to believe, being cowardly, that's the end of it. The Greek word translated cowardly, delios, and that's Strong's 1169, and it points to the idea of shrinking back, surrendering, losing courage, being fearful, failing to go forward and fight. Fear often becomes the doorway through which unbelief enters. I'm afraid that this disease that I have is what's going to kill me. It's what's going to put me in my grave. And so I just don't want to fight it. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of death. And yet Jesus Christ has conquered death. And yes, we are not going to live forever in this physical world. But we can't turn back from God just because of that, because he created us that way, and it was intended to be that way. And so every Christian begins somewhere with a set of beliefs. Some begin with that inherent belief. Easter bunnies and colored eggs and manger babies with donkeys and stars in the sky and red men in suits pulled by reindeers. I even cherish that because it led me to the other. Initially, I wonder what it might have been had I not gone to church on Sunday, had I not had a respect for God, had I not had put into me a respect for the had I not had a respect for the belief that I needed to have. And so, eventually, every believer must come to his own conclusion about belief and the type of belief in God. It's not my parents' belief. It's not my church's belief. It's not my minister belief. But it's my belief. And then to know that for all of that, our God is a rewarder of those who have that relationship with it.